All right, we are getting into Job's final reply in chapter 23. And here he's going through really a season of loneliness. Everyone goes through these different seasons in life. In verse 8, but if I go to the east, he is not there. If I go to the west, I do not find him. He's lacking this relationship with God. He doesn't realize that God is truly right before him. God is near. And what a gift we have as Christians that we know through the way that Christ lives in us. Read verse 10. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. All of a sudden, he has this revelation and he starts asserting his integrity. See in verse 12, I have not departed from the commands of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my daily bread. Give us our daily bread. This is in the Lord's Prayer. In verse 15, he has reverence. That is why I am terrified before him. When I think of all of this, I fear him. That is one thing that God certainly wants. He wants our love, He wants our devotion, but He also wants us to revere Him. And in chapter 24, his reply continues. He really wants to know all the answers. How true is that for all of us? Read verse 1. Why does the Almighty not set times for judgment? Why must those who know Him look in vain for such days? Question is, did Job really know him? Read verse 12. The groans of the dying rise from the city, and the souls of the wounded cry out for help, but God charges no one with wrongdoing. He does have a concern over right and wrong. Read verse 13. There are those who rebel against the light, who do not know its way or stay in its path. But read in verse 20. The womb forgets them. The worm feasts on them. The wicked are no longer remembered, but are broken like a tree. See, the thing is, Job wanted this all to be bearable. He wanted to know why he was suffering. And he asserts that he is a man of integrity. He is not part of the wicked. And he realizes that the wicked will ultimately face this this devastation in the end, this forgetting, this feasting in the sense of being broken down, of being no more. Verse 22, but God drags away the mighty by his power, just like Job. Though they become established, they have no assurance of life. Isn't it funny today that so much of our society is based around wanting security? And we're doing that through mostly money. And it's funny how it's called the securities industry, as if that it's supposed to give us security, that wealth is supposed to give us security. And even in the larger scheme, in a political sense, people sometimes seek power, maybe because they're looking for some kind of security. Verse 23, he may let them rest in a feeling of security. Notice how it's only a feeling, a mere feeling, but his eyes are on their ways. He knows what you're doing at all times because he is near. Verse 24, for a little while they are exalted, and then they are gone. How true. It's all ephemeral. Anything that is tangible, that can be seen, felt, experienced, that is living, is only ephemeral. Simply blink of an eye in the grand scheme of things. They are brought low and gathered up like all others. They are cut off like heads of grain. Everyone's power ends, everyone's wealth ends. We try to make it last generations, but it often doesn't. And this is the want for short term, right? But what's the desire for longer term? That's following Christ. That's following an everlasting. Chapter 25, Bildad replies, and I'm just only going to read verse 4. How then can a mortal be righteous before God? How can one born of woman be pure? It's so amazing how there's truth and falsehood scattered about this poetic book. Because truly, we can try to act righteously, we can try to live pure lives. And that's good, and it should be sought after because it's pleasing to the Lord. But are we truly righteous as if we are before God? Because Job certainly was acting righteous. Hear Job's reply in chapter 26, verse 4. Who has helped you utter these words, and whose spirit spoke from your mouth? Once again, he's asking for compassion over criticism, love, and understanding, and he feels that Satan has put these words into his mouth. But is there a sense of truth? Is Bildad actually on to something here? He is. Is his condemnation appropriate? No. Verse 13. By his breath the skies became fair, his hand pierced the gliding serpent. He understands that God does have power over Satan, of course. He came to that accurate realization. But he gives his final words to his friends in chapter 27. The Almighty who has made my life bitter, starting right off with blaming. He wants to rebuke the accuser in verse 5. He says, I will never admit you are in the right till I die. I will not deny my integrity, saying that I am righteous before God. In verse 6, I will maintain my innocence and never let go of it. My conscience will not reproach me as long as I live. So here he thinks that he is truly pure, truly free of all sin. And surely we should never take this attitude because God's standard is to the nth degree. It is incredibly vast, and we always will sin. It's just the realization that will we admit to it, or like Job will try to say that I am innocent. I can certainly say for myself, I am not innocent. I am certainly guilty of falling into sin. And it's through having the personal relationship, especially with Christ, knowing that he resides within me, being part of the body. That is what builds the relationship. That is what gives me the assurance. Job is missing this. And in verse 10, will they find delight in the Almighty? Will they call on God at all times? Question could be asked for Job. He sat in silence for 7 days. Then he talked to his friends. What happened in that 7 days is not really written. If he was talking to God in those 7 days, that is good, but we see that he is silent. So either he was praying silently, or he was probably more realistically just traumatically distraught at the time and just probably not thinking at all. Verse 13, here is the fate God allots to the wicked, the heritage of a ruthless man. The heritage a ruthless man receives from the Almighty. It is true that the end for all wicked will be disaster. He is right in that. And he is true in asserting that he didn't necessarily do something wrong to deserve this. In chapter 28, the interlude, verses 12 through 13, we see Job, or see in the book of Job, the prioritization of trusting the Lord. He is the Lord of life. Verse 12, but where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? No mortal comprehends its worth. It cannot be found in the land of the living. And it's true. But the thing is, Job didn't have the understanding. He didn't have the wisdom to see through this. He didn't have the infinite wisdom that God has. And if he wants to truly revere the Lord, he must do it with awe, reverence, and respect. Three things that he must uphold. And he definitely does have awe of the Lord. He does feel that he has reverence. He does try to respect the Lord. In verses 27 and 28, he says, Then he looked at wisdom and appraised it. He confirmed it and tested it. And he said to the human race, The fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to shun evil is understanding. It is true that only through God do we receive wisdom. What is wisdom? It's fearing him. It's having awe for him, having reverence for him, having respect for him. All of these things are meant by fear of the Lord. It all ties in. It's a loop in a sense. And he is true in this. And one can definitely say that Job did have these things for the Lord, undoubtedly. Chapter 29, verse 4. Oh, for the days when I was in my prime, when God's intimate friendship blessed my house. Question is, what caused Job to lose his intimacy? Was it the loss of wealth? Or was that intimacy still there? Certainly, it doesn't appear so. That's why God tested him in the first place. He wanted to develop this intimacy with someone that he loved very much. But Job will continue to assert his integrity. Verse 14, I put on righteousness as my clothing. Justice was my robe and my turban, completely rebuking all of his friends. I was a follower to the needy. I took up the case of the stranger. In verse 16. Verse 20, my glory will not fade. The bow will be ever new in my hand. Question is, whose glory? My glory? Job's glory? Or is it the focus on Christ's glory today? When for Job was the focus on God's glory? Did, did Job really want to have the wealth and all these things to have the false sense of a feeling of security? Is that why he loved God? Because that's a one-way relationship. And it's not really what God wants. God will give us great things, but it's only so that we can then honor him back, that we glorify and exalt him. Chapter 30, verse 1. But now they mock me, men younger than I. This is certainly something that he can take great offense to. And in verse 20 and 21, I cry out to you, God, but you do not answer. I stand up, but you merely look at me. You turn on me ruthlessly. With the might of your hand, you attack me. Once again, this is Job feeling it's a personal attack. God's will is in his own time, and Job does not see this. And testing is hard. When I hoped for good, evil came. When I looked for light, then came darkness. This is especially true in verse 30, where he has a physical ailment. My skin grows black and peels, my body turns with fever. So he's certainly suffering. No one can doubt that. And here he continues in chapter 31 to reassert his righteousness. He never lusted. He feels he's blameless. He did not use his power wrongly. He did fear. He didn't have greed. He didn't say things against God. All of these things scattered throughout this, where he's asserting. He never looked lustily at a woman. Know that I am blameless. I've never denied justice. I fear for his fear of his splendor. I could never do such things. And I've never put my trust in gold. Never said that gold is my security. And he never just simply rejoiced over his wealth. Never allowed his mouth to sin. spend the night in the street, but yet his door was always open. What is he trying to get at? He never sinned in the ways that they said. That's not why these negative things happened to Job. I'm going to leave it off here. This is Job's reply: truth and falsehood. Someone who wants to live righteously but does not have a true relationship, one of intimacy with God. And we're going to see in the following video, following discussion, very interesting remarks from a young man. Now, Job just complained that younger men than him were criticizing him, and he felt ashamed and rejected by that. But then we're going to have a young man step in the stage who has not been present, and he's going to give his thoughts on the matter. But I'm going to stop here. I want to hear your thoughts. And please reply. Maybe you've gotten something out of this that I've not said. And I hope that you have a great day. God bless.